Bonjour lads. Our hilarious news bulletin today kicks off in the land of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. The Danish Prime Minister's husband is caught in a scandal for making a movie about the nation wrecking. Hero Zelensky using the state budget. Danish brothers are currently putting the screws to the government because if the movie is a hit, and it surely will be. As this is undoubtedly the comedy of the century, will the money flow back into the state coffers? I used to really admire Europe. I say this sincerely, mesmerized by the beauty of its knowledge, literature, and art. But these European brothers nowadays are acting kinda suspect. To be more precise, their leaders are making galaxy brain moves that are straight up digging their own graves. On one hand, they are trying to save Zelensky's regime on life support with a peace plan that, if approved, would mark the first time in history the loser gets to dictate terms forcing the winner to surrender. Russia must surrender, even though the brothers just pulverized the political fortress of Ukraine to advance deep into Kharkov. Because a boatload of European sanctions will crush Russia instantly, where instantly could be 2022, 2023, or whenever Europe hurls out a new boatload of sanctions. Medicine calls this repetitive behavioral disorder. The situation is so pathetic that even Europe's close allies have to voice warnings. If a task has to be done 19 times, it means it has failed. What is happening to Europe? As you guys know, right after the anti-corruption agency, NAB, exposed a $100 billion corruption ring involving all of Zelensky's cronies, the comedian king went to Istanbul to prepare for future negotiations with Russia, and for some miraculous reason, he no longer opposed it. Initially, information about the existence of an updated peace plan hadn't even been officially announced, but was leaked through the tabloids. The deputy of Trump, the loudmouth, and this guy has quite the loose cannon mouth, himself said that these 28 points should never be made public. But once again, for some miraculous reason, an unintentional leak occurred. Let's give a round of applause for the crafty schemers in the US for releasing multiple versions of the same document to the media to gauge reactions. This is their playbook. They calculated this thoroughly. The corruption scandal gave the US the perfect excuse. It's not that the US doesn't want to help you out, but that your incompetent leaders embezzled all the money. Clearly, American taxpayer money cannot fill a bottomless pit. Therefore, Trump had to present a harsh deal and tell the comedian king to sign it for your own good. As mentioned, the plan proposed in the latest version, widely considered official, contains points unacceptable to Russia and points unacceptable to the Kiev regime. The difference is Putin toyed with Trump, saying, "Interesting, thanks. We'll discuss it," without promising anything. Meanwhile, the little green goblin threw a hissy fit, and the European brothers also threw a hissy fit, convening emergency meetings to write updates or churn out an alternative peace plan that, in reality, isn't peaceful at all. The brothers proposed a plan simpler than Trump's 28 points because it only has 24 points. In short, Ukraine is declared the winner, and Russia must surrender. The full text of the European peace plan was published in the Telegraph. The main content is as follows. Any discussion on territory can only take place after an unconditional ceasefire is achieved and begins, potentially ending at the demarcation line. The armed forces of Ukraine will not withdraw anything from the remaining territory of Donbass that they still control. This means everything stays as is at the time of the hypothetical negotiations. Ukraine's troop numbers remain at 800,000, which is 200,000 more than Trump's proposed figure. Joining NATO is a sovereign decision of Ukraine, taking into account the consensus of NATO member countries. Frozen Russian assets will be used to rebuild Ukraine without US participation. If Moscow behaves with a cooperative spirit, sanctions might be eased or even lifted in the future, or maybe not. Moscow might be invited back to the G8, but this is not guaranteed. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant must be handed over to IAEA control. The energy generated by this plant will be split equally between Russia and Ukraine. Basically, the European brothers' formula is very simple. First, Russia returns what the brothers need. Then, when Russia's attack stops, the brothers will consider whether to give anything back to Russia. According to the European brothers, Ukraine is winning and Russia is failing miserably on the battlefield. No one can interpret the logic of this plan in any rational way. Because not only does Ukraine have zero cards to play at the negotiation table, but the European brothers can't even take care of themselves. Europe is drowning in debt like there's no tomorrow. Looking at the numbers is terrifying. Just by the end of Q1 2025, The EU's total debt rose from 81% to 81.8% of the bloc's total GDP, which is somewhere over 14,800 billion euros. If calculated by ratio, the biggest deadbeat king in Europe is Greece. What kind of debt is over 150% of GDP, bros? But at least Greece's economy is small. Maybe the brothers can still save it. It's the countries ranked behind Greece that are the real trouble. Italy, France, Belgium, if these brothers pop like a helium balloon, only God can save them. Regarding the speed of debt hoarding, Finland has pulled off a spectacular speed run, followed by Poland, Romania, and Bulgaria. In this category, the French pilot continues to accelerate on his vintage aircraft. The funny thing is, the bro holding over 1/3 of the global debt, but gets away with it because he can print money to pay off. Debt is none other than the US. The US seized the chance to diss the EU right to their face, a burn that hurts worse than castration. The story is that President Trump's newly appointed Treasury Secretary declared that the EU brothers are truly useless eaters, repeating 19 sanctions packages that failed to harm the enemy, but backfired to harm themselves. As I have presented many times, Europe embargoes Russia, but Russians can produce everything from sewing needles to spaceships and space stations. Plus, they have the world's factory right next door. So when you brothers embargo them, Russians just tighten their belts a bit. They won't croak. I haven't heard of anyone dying because they didn't buy famous European luxury goods. But Russians have a few things that if the European brothers lack, they will be totally screwed. That is gas, coal, wheat, and fertilizer. Gas isn't just for heating and cooking, but for running factories. Without this, the whole economy will go tits up. Typical example is Germany. Thanks to cheap Russian gas, the industry of the European hegemon became the economic locomotive of the continent. But the brothers went ahead and cut their own oxygen, resulting in soaring inflation and stagnant production. The working class lost their jobs. Moving on. Second is wheat. Russians supply wheat to half the world. Furthermore, fertilizer, urea, and potash. Clearly, without Russian fertilizer, the European brothers' fields will stunt. Even if you brothers make expensive stuff, I dare you to spread it on the fields instead of fertilizer. You can't gnaw on it instead of bread either. On top of that, European governments have to carry the burden of the junkie Zelensky. The comedian king is truly a beggar demanding filet mignon. Every few days he flies to this country or that country, attending this conference or that conference. The purpose is just to beg for money and gear, and he only begs for the top-tier stuff. Planes must be expensive planes. Boomsticks must be state-of-the-art boomsticks. Seeing this, the European people are gradually flipping the script. Prime ministers of many European countries are dropping like flies. Bros are protesting everywhere, demanding lower fuel prices, because it's crystal clear. What needs protecting is their own citizens first, not some random bros, only to pick a side and manually stick their finger in the fuse box. Isn't that right, professors? Europe has revealed its true face, lads. That woman Callas, the Prime Minister of Estonia, was ousted but still got promoted to EU foreign policy chief thanks to expressing deep hatred for Russia. Recently, she openly admitted that the EU's plan for Ukraine is based on only 2 points: weakening Russia and supporting Ukraine. The price of whatever kush they're smoking must be cheap lately, directly proportional to the level of aggression, belligerence, loudmouthedness, and mob mentality of the European brothers. The brothers clearly want to continue the war, don't want peace, drawing up a mess of clauses that even children would laugh at. It's simply because they were ruthlessly sidelined by the big boss without any face saving. So the brothers, bitter and resentful, tried to sabotage. The brothers have climbed onto the tiger's back. Now they can't get down, having invested so much money in the clown in that 404 swamp. Since the conflict began in 2022, the clown and the European pack of jackals agreed that all costs and damages would be compensated by Russia. The Russians would have to pay for all damages: houses, roads, factories. In May 2023, 46 countries of the Council of Europe came up with something called a register of damage to record all losses and then send the bill to Russia. In 2024, the European Parliament even voted to agree to seize frozen Russian assets and use them to rebuild Quagmire 404. This plan is indeed badass sarcastic. Europe would get back its investment in the Ukraine project, along with interest. The brothers even calculated that they would force Russia to supply gas almost for free. And in the most ideal scenario, if sanctions break the Russian economy, causing Russia to collapse, the brothers could buy Russian assets dirt cheap, just like the glorious 90s. That is the main content of Europe's get-rich-quick scheme. But reality isn't a strawberry. It's very harsh. If Ukraine surrenders and the 300 billion Russian stash can't be swallowed, the European people themselves will hang their leaders up and ask, what the actual F***, where did all our tax money go? And then it's curtains for them.